Well, good afternoon, everyone. The defense authorization bill will be going down to the president. It's just in the process of clearing the Senate floor now. We all know the president's threatened to veto this bill, which is truly outrageous given the conditions around the world with which we're confronted. No one knows more about that than the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, so I'd like to call on Senator McCain to give you his take on where we are.
Apparently, the President of the United States believes that he needs to veto the defense authorization bill on the grounds that the budgetary issues have not been resolved. So the President of the United States is placing budgetary issues ahead of the welfare and benefit of the men and women who are serving in the military and their ability to defend the nation. The world has not been in more turmoil since the end of World War II, and the President decides that we cannot authorize the ability of these brave young Americans to defend this nation. I might point out that the amount of money that we authorize is exactly what the President requested in his budget request, and it supports the men and women who are serving in the military in a broad variety of ways, from the ability to get prescription drugs, to a new retirement system, to pay raise for our troops, to equip them with what they need to defend this nation. I cannot imagine a President of the United States vetoing a bill that authorizes the ability of Americans to defend this nation under these most challenging circumstances. But maybe because of his failure to lead and because of his feckless foreign policy we are in today, maybe he feels that we don't need to have the wherewithal to fight it.
Thank you, Senator McCain. Today we had a hearing in Senate Armed Services Committee with General Campbell, and I think if you all read some of his prepared testimony, it'll give you a better understanding of the threats that we're facing. The general says if we fail in our mission, Afghanistan will once again become a sanctuary for terrorists bent on attacking our interests and citizens abroad and at home. You know, if that doesn't bring it home to us, to the threats that we face, I don't know what does. We're having a hearing tomorrow in Armed Services Committee as well on Iraq and Iran. We'll see what's happening there, but all of you know what's happening there. We're in danger. We have a hearing on Thursday with Russia. You know, I've said it before at this podium, we live in a dangerous world. It's only becoming more and more dangerous, yet the President is threatening to veto our defense authorization, an authorization that provides for the security and defense of our nation, an authorization that provides for our military men and women and their families. You know, this is an act that received overwhelming support in committee. It has now on the floor. It meets the budget request of the President, and so I would hope that he would not veto this bill, that it does become law, because that's how he would do his job, and we're doing ours. Thank you.
Could I just make one additional comment? It's become unfortunately clear the President of the United States is more concerned about a budgetary issue and appropriations and funding issue than he is about the welfare and benefit of the men and women who serve this country and their ability to defend it. Shameful.
Obviously, with the shooting in Oregon, all of us have been riveted on root causes for these acts of seemingly senseless violence in our communities around the country. I was struck by a story in the New York Times today where the mother of this shooter was interviewed, where she said, sometimes he takes his medication, sometimes he doesn't. And that's where the big problem is, when he doesn't take his medication. So I've heard the President and Secretary Clinton rail about this issue, but not come up with any solutions, any constructive ideas. I've tried to do that along with others, and by focusing on the mental health component, the common element in so many of these instances of mass violence. And one of the ways we can do that is by empowering families to give them other alternatives for court-administered and supervised treatment on an outpatient basis, so people are compliant with their medication requirements so they don't get sicker and sicker and perhaps descend into violence. We can work more constructively with law enforcement and schools and our judges to try to divert people from prison and jail to places where they can actually get some help, and so they can be restored to productive lives. And many places like my hometown of San Antonio are doing just that. And then we need to strengthen the instant criminal background check system by incentivizing the states to upload cases of adjudicated mental illness onto those systems so that can be documented when someone tries to buy a firearm. For example, the shooter in Virginia Tech had been adjudicated mentally ill, and so many of these cases, case after case, you see where this is a common thread. If the president would be willing to work with us, as we have worked together to reform our criminal justice laws in a bipartisan way, as was announced last week, we could actually make some real progress by dealing with some of the root causes. But as long as the president wants to demagogue this issue and use this as a way to drive Americans apart rather than to bring us together in a common solution, we're not going to be able to make the progress that we need to make in order to protect people from themselves and to protect the communities around them.
Mr. Leader, on TPP, you signaled some skepticism about the deal. Do you expect to ask the administration to make some changes before they?
Well, we're in the process, all of us, of reading the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and I don't have any observations to make at the moment, but there are a number of troubling parts of it that we're all taking a look at.
Leader McConnell. Senator Cornyn just mentioned the gun issue. Of course, you all are negotiating a big budget deal potentially. There is a line, as you know, that goes back to '96 in appropriations that effectively bars the CDC from studying guns at all as a public health issue. Do you think it's appropriate to continue that rider in appropriations as you negotiate this deal? Is there any prospect of it being tweaked, modified, changed at all?
Yeah, I don't have any observations to make about what may ultimately emerge from the talks this fall.
Leader, do you support putting a repeal of the Obamacare mandates and defund Planned Parenthood into the reconciliation package?
I do. We'll take up reconciliation when it comes over from the House, and it's my hope and expectation that it would have in it as much of Obamacare as we can repeal, and I hope that it will also include provisions to defund Planned Parenthood. No, I don't have any update on the budget discussion.
Budget resolution in place at the time, which required offsets for both defense and non-defense. This year, you're going by a more lenient standard, including mobility for defense. Do you think that standard should be, without getting into the details of the agreement, do you think that should be the standard going forward?
I admire you all for keeping on trying, but I don't have any observations to make about the budget talks today. Well, I think Senator Cornyn's laid out an interesting suggestion, and we'll all be taking a look at it. Thanks.